This is Mrs. Naslund, and today we'll be doing Unit 6, Lesson 5, Measure Temperature. Our learning target for today is, I can demonstrate understanding of the metric temperature scale, and I can relate the metric temperature scale to everyday experiences. Our vocab we'll look at today is Celsius and Fahrenheit. So really, what we're doing today is we're looking at the metric version of temperature, which is Celsius, and the US version is called Fahrenheit, and we're going to compare them. Most of the world chooses to use the metric temperature scale, and here in the United States we use the Fahrenheit scale. So being able to recognize both is important because when you travel and you look at the temperature, most of the time you will see it in the Celsius scale. So let's go ahead and look at this chart, and this is comparing temperature in Celsius. That's what we use. That's the metric version, and Fahrenheit is what we use in the US. So let's go ahead and compare. What is the range of Celsius temperatures on the table? So here's the Celsius temperatures, and the range, remember, is the biggest number to the smallest number. I want you to notice that this is a -20. So how I like to figure out the range, especially when we go negative, is to figure out how much negative it is to get to 0. So it's 20 to get to 0, so I'm going to write down that 20. And then I want to figure out how much range from 0 all the way up here. It's 130. So really I'm going to need to do 20 plus 130, which is going to give me 150 range. So there's 150 degree range between the lowest temperature to the highest temperature. Do the same thing. What is the range of the Fahrenheit temperatures on the table? So the Fahrenheit ones, we've got -4 all the way up to 266. So again, I'm going to get to 0 first. So -4 to 0 is just 4. And then I'm going to add the 0 to the biggest number. So 0 to 266 is 266. I'm going to add those together. And it'll give me a total of 270 degrees. So there's 270 degrees from the smallest number to the biggest number on the Fahrenheit scale. So you see there's a much bigger range of temperatures in the Fahrenheit scale, the US scale, than there is in the Celsius scale. So what happens to water at 32 degrees Fahrenheit? So we're looking at our 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I want you to think. You've probably learned about it in science even. What happens at 32 degrees Fahrenheit? The answer is water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? And the equivalent to that in Celsius is 0 degrees. So at 0 degrees Celsius, water freezes, and in the United States at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, water freezes, okay? So if you know water freezes at 32 degrees, what do you think happens at 212 degrees Fahrenheit? So way up here, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 100 degrees Celsius. What do you think happens? The answer is water boils, okay? So at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, water boils, and at 100 degrees Celsius, water boils, okay? The temperature sign outside the bank reads 50 degrees. Is this temperature a Celsius or Fahrenheit reading? So go look here. 50 degrees. Is that a Celsius or a Fahrenheit reading? And that's a great question. The answer is it's a Fahrenheit reading because 50 degrees Celsius 50 degrees Celsius is 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really, really, really hot, right? We're not very likely to see 122 degrees. In our summers, highest we usually get is like that 102, 103, but 102, 122 degrees would be way too hot, okay? If a Celsius thermometer shows 8 degrees, so our Celsius shows 8 degrees, so right between these two, what kind of clothing would you want to wear to be comfortable? So look over here at the Fahrenheit. So this is, if you were here, what kind of clothing would we wear here in the United States? Now remember, this is freezing. So what kind of clothing would you use? And the answer is you'd want warm clothing, something long sleeves because it's cold. Not as cold as it can get, right? It can get really cold, but it is still cold. If a puddle of water has a thin coating of ice on them, what is a reasonable estimate for a Celsius temperature? So remember we said that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What's a good estimate for the Celsius temperature? Well, it would have to be under that 0 degrees, right? About 0, because that's when it freezes. So we can use those two to convert. What this one? A digital body thermometer says the body temperature is 39 degrees Celsius. So Celsius, 39 degrees, right about here. So this is our temperature right here. Do you have a fever? How do you know? So if you had about 103, 104, do you have a fever? And the answer is yes, definitely have a fever. A normal Celsius degree temperature is 37 degrees. So if you're above that, then you have a fever. All right. All right, so on this temperature, we're going to calculate going between Celsius and Fahrenheit using our nice little chart. So I copy the chart right here, and we're going to copy going between. So it says if you have 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so right between these two here, approximately how many degrees Celsius would you have? And I'd say 40 degrees is right in between there. So how many degrees Celsius would you have? And the answer would be that you would have 5 degrees Celsius, right? It's about halfway in between those two numbers. How about if you have 75 degrees Fahrenheit? So 75 is going to be right in this range here, a little bit over half here. How many degrees Fahrenheit would you have? And I would say about 24 degrees Celsius. Now, if you're right in that range, we're just kind of estimating here, and it's okay if you're not exactly right. So let's try this one. How about if you have 0 degrees Fahrenheit? So you're closer to this side. About how many do you have in Celsius? And you'll notice it's going to be a negative number, right? Because it's over here. And it's only 0 degrees. It's about a couple away. So it's right about here. So that would say about maybe negative 18 degrees Celsius. Okay, how about you try this one? Go ahead and try 15 degrees Celsius. So 15 degrees Celsius, and we want to move to Fahrenheit. What would that be? All right, you said about 59 degrees Fahrenheit. You were right on. What about this one? 35 degrees Celsius. Halfway in between these two. So what would be about halfway between these ones here? How many degrees Celsius? You said 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Great work. All right, last one. Negative 15 degrees Celsius. So about halfway between these would be what? If you said about 5 degrees Fahrenheit, great work. All right, let's try a couple more questions here. Each day of the school year, Mrs. James' students measure the outside temperature in degrees Celsius. They made a table of their results. This table shows 4 sample weeks from different times of the year. All right, so these are 4 different weeks, and it's showing the Celsius degree temperatures outside. How is the temperature during week A different from the temperature during week D? So we look at these temperatures. We're looking at Celsius, so they're right down in this range. In week D, the temperatures in Celsius are in the 28, 29, 30 degree range. So what's the big difference? And I think what you could say is that during this week, it's a lot colder, right? During this week, it warms up over that course of time. For this one, in your city, what month or months of the year could each week represent? Explain your thinking. Well, I would say for us, the really cold temperatures, right, are going to be our middle of winter. So our November, December, January, maybe February, and then it gets a little warmer. So maybe our March, April, May. Then we're getting to the 13 range. So, and it keeps going up. So let's say maybe March and April, maybe March, and then maybe this is April. So if we're looking at 21 degrees, it's about 68, 69 degrees, so May or June. And then this like 31 is over here. This is the hot stuff. So this would be like July, August, right? Those hot months. So you can kind of use these to kind of guesstimate. So today we talked about the difference between measuring temperature in both the metric scale and the scale that we use in the US. We talked about both Celsius and Fahrenheit. We looked at the chart and used it to help us answer questions. You can go practice some more on your homework and remembering.